May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So this parable today from the Gospel of Luke, this parable of the shrewd manager, it is, I'll admit, a bit of a head scratcher. But it's really amazing, and it's a lot, so I just want to dig right in. So first of all, with this parable, I find it interesting to think about how it fits kind of in the overall scope and the larger narrative of Luke's gospel. So in the Gospel of Luke, if you've been following along for the past few weeks, you've heard how Jesus is constantly under attack from the religious elite. And they are criticizing him really for a whole lot of things, but mainly they are criticizing him for eating with sinners and hanging out with just the wrong people. They do not like that. And so Jesus' response is to tell 5 parables. So first he tells this parable of lost sheep, and how there's a shepherd and loses a sheep and it goes after the one. And then he tells a parable about a woman who has lost a coin, and then she turns her whole house upside down until she finds this coin. And then, we didn't get this, they kind of like put this in somewhere else, but right after those two, you get the parable of the prodigal son. And this is in response to being criticized for hanging out with the wrong people, those people who have lost their way. So in response to that, we get the story of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then the lost son. And then the next 2 stories we hear this week and then next week in Luke's gospel, both of those begin with, there was a rich man. So we've got lost sheep, we've got lost coin, lost son, and then there was a rich man, there was a rich man. So these 5 stories make up Jesus' response to his critics. And so when we look at all 5 of these parables as a unit, is how those criticizing Jesus did not value people because they inappropriately valued money. They placed money above people, and especially people who they thought had lost their way. The hungry, the homeless, right? And so often we read through Luke's gospel, and I think we can kind of pick out, the lost sheep, lost coin, especially the prodigal son, right? We like these stories. They have happy endings because, like last week, we hear there's rejoicing in heaven and on earth when that which is lost is found. But when we tell those and we kind of gloss over these stories that begin, there was a rich man, I think we can kind of run the risk of maybe letting ourselves off the hook a little bit about what it is to maybe inappropriately value our money, or maybe put money above people, or money above the environment, or money above whatever, right? So again, this is why it's very important to dig into this gospel story today, to do a little deeper dive. And if we're really going to understand what this parable offers, then we have to understand a little something about the context of first century Palestinian economics, right? What was going on in the economy, in the people's lives back then. So remember, this is all set under the backdrop of Roman occupation. Romans had come in, they had occupied Israel and the Holy Land. And so when Rome comes in and invades people or a nation, the people get to keep their religion and they get to keep their culture. But they have to pay their allegiance and they have to pay their taxes to Rome. So it's like you still get to be Jewish, but you got to pay up. And so Rome would exploit their resources and labor, right? He'd exploit the resources and the labor of the Jews. But there were, of course, some Jews who had figured out how to work the Roman system, right? And get rich off of all of this. And so here's how this works. The rich Jews, the wealthy Jews, live in the south, in the southern state of Judea, where the capital city, Jerusalem, is. And the poorer people live up in the north in a region called Galilee, where there's more agriculture, more farming. So this would be like Judea would be like the Charlotte region, right? Mecklenburg County, maybe a little of, we're in the southern part of Iredell County, right? Lake Norman area. That's Judea. But then Galilee, that's like Yadkin County, right? Up there, right? Rural, right? Farmers. And so today we hear about how the major cash crops up in the north, those are things like wheat and olive oil. And also they grew a lot of wine, grapes up there for wine. And so the Romans would throw heavy taxes on these northern farmers that they just could not afford to pay. And so the merchants in the south, they get an idea. What they do is they take advantage of this. They go up to the farmers in the north and they say, okay, we'll pay your taxes in exchange for basically the deed on your land. But then don't worry, right? Don't worry. You can still live on your land. You can be a tenant farmer on your land. But then you'll just give us a healthy percentage of the crops, right? And then what they would do is they would become these absentee landowners. They wouldn't leave Charlotte, right? They'd send someone else to do it. They would send kind of the middleman, their managers or their stewards up there to deal with this. And so this is gonna shock you guys. This is gonna sound crazy, but they created a system where the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And so the rich absentee landowner in the South, they'd become so rich and so removed, they'd send their managers. It wasn't safe for them to go up there because they were not popular. And so eventually the stewards were not so popular either. Jesus actually tells stories about how the manager keeps sending stewards and the people keep killing the stewards, right? And so this is the backdrop for this parable today. We have this mid-level employee who is about to get fired. And the landowner asks him for the books, right? It's just like, here's your cardboard box. You've got to the end of the day to hand in your computer and leave, right? And so all of a sudden, the steward sees just how expendable he really is. And he knows that he doesn't really have a skill set that is suited to do much else. So now if he's going to survive, if he's going to eat, he's going to have to get in good with these farmers up in the north. And so that's what he does. And this is, okay, here is the key message in this gospel today. He switches sides. He goes from helping the rich and those at the top to helping the poor. And he's crafty about it. He's clever. He's shrewd. But he uses his clever ways and his knowledge of the system to serve the poor instead of serving the rich. This story today is about someone who is expendable, and he sees through the economic system of injustice. And he switches sides to go serve another master and help the poor. But he does this in a way where he is working the system. So in the end of this story, the landowner's happy, right? He's kind of getting what's his. In corporate language, we kind of say like, the investors would be happy, right? Now the real winner in this is the poor farmers. Today we hear how Jesus is very much a realist. He knows that we have to use money, but he also knows that the money we use is inherently dishonest. There's a dirty side to every dollar. Just like there's a dirty side to kind of like every product we use or make or sell. Jesus knows that the money that passes through our hands, even though it has this dirty side, it can be used for good. The system can be flipped for good. And we see this today in our own society, in our capitalistic society. We see it in big ways, really, where big business will actually give a lot back a lot of the time. Or not a lot of time, but some of the time, right? One great example of this that's kind of close to home is actually Rise Against Hunger. This is that organization that we partner with every year here at St. Patrick's, where we pack meals that are sent all over the world. This is our Be the Sermon Sunday. Remember the red hairnets? You guys, you with me? All right. That ministry was first started by a Methodist minister and a businessman over in Raleigh. But now, this is interesting, now it is backed by Kraft Heinz Food Company. You may actually remember their names on those little bags of rice that we fill. They have provided tens of millions of dollars. And they've committed to giving, I think, $15 million more by the end of 2027. And so by partnering with volunteers like us, we have helped to flip the system, right? We have, together with a corporation, provided over 1 billion meals to hungry people around the world. And this is just one example. I mean, there are others. People are actually talking about Duke Hospital giving back to communities, and Atrium, we'll hear about that in our Give Hope Global conversation. Another good example that's very close to home is Lowe's Corporate, right across the street out there. Lowe's, I think, has given like $100 million to Habitat for Humanity at this point. It's amazing what happens when we flip the system, when companies give back, right? This is kind of my favorite of these stories, is the Patagonia story. Patagonia is a clothing company. And I go around telling people this story. This is a good one. Their founder, Yvon Chouinard, Yvon Chouinard is a climber in his 20s. He's out in California doing a lot of climbing. He starts making climbing gear, and then he starts making clothing. And then now I think they just mainly make clothing. But Yvon Chouinard, over his lifetime, he grew this company, and then at some point he just wanted to retire, right? He wanted to get out. And his kids didn't want to run the business. And so this is really cool. Instead of selling the company, he gave it away. He gave away a $3 billion company to the environment and the planet. And he didn't even get a tax break for doing this. He actually had to pay, I think, like over $1 million to set all of this up. And what he did was he gave all the non-voting stock in the company, he gave that to a nonprofit that he created that would get 100% of the profits going forward. And then the voting stock of the company, he gave that to a trust that he had set up to kind of safeguard all their values and to make sure that the nonprofit stayed on the rails, right, and kept going the right direction. So what this means now is that every dollar that you spend on a Patagonia shirt that's not reinvested in the company, every dollar goes to the planet. It goes to fighting climate change and protecting nature. Yvon Chouinard said, hopefully this will influence a new form of capitalism that doesn't end up with a few rich people and a bunch of poor people. He's trying to flip the system. So in the end here, we all have to use money. We just do. But we can use our money shrewdly and for good. We are consumers, but consumers have power. Investors have power. It's like we can vote with our wallets about which corporations we want. Our credit card statements and our investment portfolios are theological documents. And so today, Jesus reminds us that we can be good, shrewd stewards. We can help flip the system and use dishonest wealth for eternal ends.